Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you guys doing tonight? It is 8:15, and I have a special treat for you guys. I'm going to have Dylan Louis Monroe of the Deep State Mapping Project, and we're going to be discussing the mini Qmap and recent Qposts. So, um, can't wait to talk about this. It's something I've been actually waiting for some time. Let me see if I got it. Alright. There we go. There we go. There we go. Awesome.
It's working.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
I've had a little bit of a rough day. I had a migraine earlier because I was trying to set up my car for the 4th of July parade with I wanted to get a QAnon piñata, and they didn't have the Q, and so I kind of freaked out, but I'm going to figure out something else.
They have W's?
Actually, well, in the type of piñata I wanted, they only had 1, 2, 3. So I was thinking maybe 17, but it only went up till 3. So I'm going to figure out something else.
It only goes up to 3? Oh, goodness.
I mean, it's piñatas, so they don't have the whole alphabet at Party City.
17 would have been wonderful. Q would have been wonderful. I was thinking you did a WWG1 WGA.
I'm going to do that. I mean, the main thing is going to be the window paint. So we're going to do everything in the windows. And I got a few other accessories. So It's going to be good, hopefully.
So,
and we got the flyers.
Well,
but it's a lot to plan in a couple days to do a whole parade. And I'm not even sure if I'm in the parade. Actually, I was just checking my emails because I applied late. But we're going to do it. We're going to show up either way, and we're going to be in that parade and represent Q and give out the flyers.
Which is kind of interesting considering that in the one of the most recent Q posts, he's talking about if one of these people in the press corps will ask Sarah Sanders or ask Trump, who is Q in the first place? And they're like, maybe we'll have to force this a little bit, but they have their own narrative that they have to follow, so they'd be kind of branching off a bit.
Yeah, I was actually just wondering that the other day before Q posted it. I was like, how has no one in the press asked Trump just to confirm or deny? It's they ask him all these other bullshit questions all the time, and they want to run articles about dismissing Q as not true, but then they won't even ask him once if it is or not. That's kind of weird. And then Q posted the exact same question. I was like, well, I guess we're on the same page.
Well, I've been following John Acosta, Laura Loomer, and they've all been I know the Anons have just been bombarding them with that. Them just ask the question.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty good memes already, based on that one Q post asking about the press corps. I haven't created one myself yet, but other people have definitely jumped on it.
So I just wanted to say thank you for joining me. And I was wondering if you could introduce yourself and Deep State Mapping Project to people who are not familiar with it.
Of course. Well, I'm Dylan Louis Monroe. My website is Deep State Mapping Project. I created what I call the Q Web, and everyone else calls the Qmap. And certain QAnon groups get mad at me for calling it the Qmap, so I keep calling it the Q Web. And then there's also the Q Key, which I'm wearing, one of my Q Key t-shirts. This is, the Deep State Mapping Project. So I created the Q Web in mid-November. I first shared it on January 1st, 2018. Actually, on New Year's Eve is when it kind of went viral. Kind of my first thing ever to go viral on Facebook, which was cool. Lost my train of thought.
You're kind of explaining what.
Yeah. Oh, so then what happened was I went to my first Truther meetup in Las Vegas in early January because the Qmap also went viral on this guy's blog, Michael Sean Brown's blog, who runs Through the Looking Glass. And so I was going to Vegas. He lived in Vegas, and he kind of proposed that we do like a meetup. And so I had my first kind of truther meetup there, and met a bunch of cool people and got a bunch of new ideas for the Qmap, Qweb. And Michael Sean Brown was the one who suggested that I turn it into like a real like monetized website, which I kind of was planning to do in like the more distant future, but the fact that it went viral when it did kind of like really lit the fire under me to get this website up like ASAP. And he also suggested the idea of using a service that's like a print on demand and drop shipping service combined, which there's a few of them out there. Like I'm using the one through Shopify called Printful. And they're basically taking most of the profits, but at least it's getting the products out in a very professional and timely manner. And I get about $5 or $7 per product I sell. So it's a decent arrangement we have.
I remember it must have been like February or March when I actually got introduced to the Qweb, and I was, the first thought that came to mind was you know how when people talk about like conspiracy theorists and they normally have like the pegboard, and they have like everything connected.
Yeah.
That was just, it just mind blew me how everything's kind of connected, either directly or indirectly.
Yeah, definitely. People have compared it to like a scene from, I think, Sunny in Philadelphia, like when the guy has all of these like pins crossing over, like
he's like,
or like some people like True Detective has stuff like that.
That isn't that like the one thing where he's like this and he's like pointing to the wall or something like that?
Yeah. It's like that really eccentric guy has like gone crazy in the office. But yeah, that's kind of what it's like. I mean, it didn't feel like that creating it. Like it really was kind of, it was an art project because I'm an artist and that's what I was doing. But I did make every effort to make it as accurate as I could. And, you know, when I was trying to fill in gaps, I would search for something that was really good to fill that gap with. And then really weird things happen when I'm creating it. Like the weirdest synchronicities happen. Like, it's like I discover, it's like there'll be a place where there's a blank and like say like I need an arrow, and then I'll realize that like two terms where I needed the arrow like make so much sense together, and then I'll even find like proof of like that connection like later on. So it's like so many synchronicities have happened, like I couldn't even go through them, but it's just like when I'm making it, it's like almost like I'm tapping into like a higher level, and like the artwork actually like tells me things too. It's like really weird.
Yeah.
Kind of creepy.
I know there's been a lot of talk of like dealing with the collective consciousness, and maybe that's where it comes from. You know, everyone's kind of connected indirectly, so tap it from a higher power, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, so if you guys see any little like gaps on the Qmap, you might be able to tell the future by trying to figure out what should go there.
So, do you want to go over it a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I guess we kind of plan to talk more about the mini, which is the new version, which I really like. Like, I feel like it's really the core of the most important stuff, and all the most important ideas are expressed here in an even more concise way than the original. So I just created this like last week. It took about 3 days to convert the big one into the little one. The big one was set up for 8.5 by 11, and this is exactly 5 by 5. So it is actually the exact same size text as the original 8.5 by 11 printout. It's just chopped down, and you actually get 2 per page. You know, I don't have one of the ones where it's, oh, look, you have it. Perfect. Wow, great.
I have the 2x2, and then on the back you have these.
Yeah, so that's how it prints, and then there's guidelines on that side to cut it out.
Kind of like, so be kind of, that's upside down.
Yeah, you got to run this
like
back through the printer.
So kind of like that.
Yeah, I did a cool back. Actually, this is the older back. But yeah, it's for flyers. I mean, it's specifically for 4th of July, but it's also good for like slipping it into newspapers. And I know like around here, all the Starbuckses have like a bulletin board, and coffee shops too obviously have like areas where people put out business cards. So like it would fit there really well. And I mean, I'm always going to say, like, I'm not just trying to promote my website and sell posters. Like, I'm, trying to get the message out. Like, the information is more important to me than selling the products.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's like, the more people that get their hands on this, like, they get exposed to this information. And then on the back, there probably should be a bigger reference to QAnon. Oh shit, I have an old one. 1 second. There's a few different versions of these that I went through before I finally decided on the final. Yeah, here's a new one. So, I mean, they both have the message that says, have you heard the word of QAnon? But then, well, this one had the real symbol on top, but the new one that you'll download has the Q on top. And so people will be introduced to Q that way. And I have like my favorite little quote from Trump's inauguration there, the "Unlock the Mysteries of Space" quote. And then I have the Great Awakening from 5D Qmap that he created, that logo, which actually I haven't shared it yet, or maybe I have, but I interviewed 5D Consciousness or 5D Awakening Consciousness Champ, I forget his last name or first name, on a Discord last week, and it was a really great interview, like where he described the Great Awakening map, which you've probably seen that, right? It's the one that looks just like the Qmap, but it's the Great Awakening map.
That one, I've heard of it. I haven't actually seen it.
Well, everyone gets really confused about who made it, and then people think he made my map, and people think I made his map. But we're two different people, but we both support each other's work pretty much fully. I mean, he gets into slightly different content than I do, but I think his original map I saw was like the perfect complement to mine. I'm gonna switch angles here for a second just to show you what I'm talking about. So that was his original map. It was a triangular one. And it went from like the stuff that's sort of on my map, false flag, deep state, into really like high level, like Buddhism, like rainbow body ascension stuff. And then he created another one that was a black and white that looked a lot more like mine. So we did an interview talking about his map. And he's just like really an expert. Like he's done DMT like 4 times. He does like mushrooms all the time. And his maps is really cool too. Like I think I looked through the entire thing and like looked up every bullet point. Well, not looked up every bullet point, but wondered about every bullet point. Because I really respect his work, and they just make a good combination, the two maps together.
Yeah, they look very, very similar. I can understand where the confusion came into play.
Yeah, he even has like the same arrowhead, I think, but it's cool. It's all good. Like, I think we're both about just getting the information out and getting the Great Awakening like rolling. He's like really into this thing called the Great Solar Flash, which is, I guess the sun's gonna like not explode, but like emit like extra strong energy, and then it's gonna like awaken everyone's consciousness to like become like 5D or like psychic or something, which I'm not 100% sold on, like that philosophy. Like, I mean, I maybe I've just been scared for so many years of having a solar flare that basically does an EMP and like destroys all our technology and puts us back in the Renaissance age. But he thinks this can be a good thing, so I hope he's right.
I know a lot of people I talk to who are really into the 5D and spiritualism and stuff like that. They talk about something called the event, and from what they are possibly, the way they're kind of discussing this is that the world we live in is very finite for a reason. It's meant to constrain and restrict people because, as geneticists would have stated, that there's a lot of junk DNA within our body, and the reason we're in this 3D realm is to make sure those things don't activate. So if you basically what happens if you take that person out of a confined, restrictive area and then you put them in a 5D where it's more natural, everything activates and all of a sudden you become this like superhuman abilities. I'm not exactly sure of the whole details, but it's basically you're more comfortable. There's less issues.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely believe that, there's such a thing as psychic abilities. I'm not sure how far it goes. I mean, I'm not sure what would happen if everyone on the planet like awoke one day and had like telekinesis and like the ability to teleport and everything. It's kind of hard to imagine, but I think it is true to some extent. I mean, I've definitely had things in my life in the past few years where I feel like I've seen the future in my dreams, like specific things that happen later in my life, and that's like a minor example that you can't really control, but there are people who do channeling and psychics, and not all of them are quacks. Like some of them definitely have some abilities,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it is something that all of us have in a way. It's obviously something you have to train to, just like you train at a sport or weightlifting. It takes a lot of practice, and 5D Champ, the guy who did the Great Awakening map, is really into the whole Tibetan Buddhist meditation. I'm not sure if he's not actually Buddhist himself, but he has researched it, and actually when he's on his DMT trips, like he's actually seen like Tibetan imagery and like learned things about Tibetan Buddhism that just from like the cosmos. Like I guess when you're on DMT, you can see like stuff that like truths that you can't see normally.
Mm-hmm.
So I gotta try it so I can speak for myself.
I
I
know.
actually just tried a dab the other night that I felt like that was enough for me. I was like seeing the grid on like everything in my field of vision.
I know from personal experience. What I found very interesting about this was the whole idea of like sacred geometry. Like you kind of dig into like from a mathematical sense, like the word like and phi and pi, and how
Hmm.
you look at almost anything, and they always kind of fall into the same digit. And
Yeah,
with the Fibonacci spiral and stuff like that.
yeah. I mean, there's definitely stuff with that Fibonacci thing, fractals. I watched a few YouTubes once on that tree of life because when I made my other map, the Sephiroth map, people were harping on me because like I don't even really know like about Kabbalah and like what the Sephiroth means.
Oh, okay.
But so I watched like a YouTube on like the tree of life, which that the tree of life is a circular shape with all kinds of little like crescents in it.
Mm-hmm.
That actually I think the Sephiroth shape can be extracted out of that. Um, and I mean, I understood kind of like the way the tree of life is drawn. I don't necessarily completely understand its application to like all matter yet, but I'm working. I'm getting there. I'm hearing like weird noises sometimes. That Facebook. Um, but anyways, like I don't want to talk about 5D too much. I mean, I'm just still really stoked on that interview because it was good, and I still have to share it. But
All right.
do you want to go into the Square Qmap a little bit deeper?
Let's.
All right. I think we were going to kind of go over maybe like what's included, what's left out, what's new.
I have a I have a basic memory of the full size one.
Yeah. So I kind of showed you this. I did my first screen share last night, which was kind of fun. It was actually just a test to do interviews with someone else that we're going to have to do a screen share. But so I just did a screen share as a test, and I sort of took people on a quick little tour through my working file of the Square Qmap. But I'm going to show you again in a little bit more detail right now. So this is, I basically started the Square Qmap from the Qmap, and I just took, so this is the new one, and I opened the old one and just basically chopped out the most important stuff, so you can see like what's gone and what's still there, which is kind of cool. It took most everything from the central column. I mean, definitely like Trump, definitely like the pyramid of the power structure, which was, that triangle right there.
Mm-hmm.
CIA, Bilderberg, obviously like a few of the most important things on the map. Pentagon. I left off Hillary Clinton because she's just like a bitch, and I think really in like the long-term scheme of things, like she's not going to be remembered as a very important figure. She's going to be remembered as the person that ran against Trump and lost and did a bunch of horrible things before that, but she's not exactly like a big player in the master conspiracy. I mean, I think they wanted her to be, but that didn't happen. I left off the Illuminati card game, which is very prophetic, but it's not that important. But yeah, I got most everything else from the main column. Like I left, everybody knows the 4th of July, everybody, or FBI is kind of obvious. But so yeah, you can see where the gaps are. I took most of the main bubbles. But the one thing I left off a lot of was all the different like false flags, which sort of went down this right side here.
Mm-hmm.
It just basically had a list of all the different like false flags and, you know, like lone shooter events that have happened over the past 50 years, like from Lee Harvey Oswald through the Las Vegas massacre. Which, you know, it's good to have in your mind like a sense of that list. But once you know that most of these shooting events are staged in a way, like maybe not staged as in like all crisis actors, but staged as in planned by either the CIA or the FBI.
It was like it was premeditated in some fashion.
Well, premeditated not just by the lone wolf, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that MK Ultra probably played a role in it. Like there was some kind of drug use, obviously, like a psychoactive drug use, and then you know, trauma-based mind control is how it came about. Yeah, Monarch, how it might have come about. And that also usually there's probably multiple shooters involved as well, like agencies like GS4 and private contractors that hire guns, that, you know, the Illuminati hires their guns and has their false flags and blames it on whatever group they want to blame it on. So a lot of that's off, but the basic concepts are still on the mini Qmap, like the concepts of, that's too close, but lone gun, crisis actors, MK Ultra in general. And I think, yes, we still have the Vegas massacre, because that's actually one of the things that kind of started the Qmap. I mean, not necessarily, but that's one of the most recent events that happened when I started the Qmap, because I started that in mid-November. And so that Vegas thing was really fresh in my mind. And actually, the Vegas massacre is kind of the reason I went to Vegas. I mean, not till I wanted to like lick the ground or anything, but like, I was trying to see a Marilyn Manson concert, and he was playing in Vegas, and he canceled his concert in Columbus. And so I went to Vegas because I wanted to see the Luxor Hotel, like after the Vegas thing happened. And I realized how close the Luxor was to it, and that I thought the Luxor played like a symbolic role in what happened. I had an urge to go there. Like it's kind of like a metaphysical, like this urge, like I had to see this place. And so it was like a really weird coincidence that it ended up being the same location of Michael Sean Brown, who published the Qmap, and that's where it went viral. Mm-hmm. Have you been to Vegas?
What's that?
Have you been to Vegas?
I have, but it's been a very long time. I was like 6 or 7 years old, and the Luxor just opened.
Oh,
I actually went into the Luxor, and I remember being very weirded out. There was like, I don't know how I'm very sensitive to like vibrations and like auras and, you know, stuff of that nature. So I had that very weird vibe feeling when you walked into it. I mean, nowadays you look at it like, and like that looks a lot like the pyramid that is behind the dollar bill. But anyways, you walk into it and it's like, this feels very surreal. Yeah. They actually had animatronics within the building. And they were on rollers, so they would actually go around the hotel and the meeting room and stuff like that. And wow. and they would talk to you, and I remember one, it was actually of a sarcophagus, and it would just go up to you and it'd be like, "Welcome to Luxor." And I'm like 6 years old, so I'm like, what the heck is going on? This is not Disney World.
Yeah, it's gotten like actually probably like less cool since it was when it first opened, because I didn't even know about the animatronics, but I've watched a William Cooper little documentary. I think it's actually a radio show that they put video to, of him exploring the Luxor, like with the press pass, like when it first opened. And they had all kinds of like, it was almost like a little theme park where you went on this like Egyptian like quest, and like they had a lot more like specifically like Egyptian restaurants or like lounges. Like there was like an Isis lounge, and there was like a whole Egyptian show. Like I think now it's the magic show. It's like Chris Angel that does some weird fucked up.
Oh, Mind Freak. Yeah, Chris Angel's Mind
Freak.
Yeah, he does. He does stuff like he slides down the side or something like that. Or
yeah, but originally it was some kind of like a play or production that was very like Egyptian themed. Like I think there was like chariots, and like it was the whole intense like Roman circus. So yeah, it's definitely changed over the years, but it's still like you walk in there and I didn't expect it to be like completely hollow. Like I think that's the biggest interior structure I've ever been in. Like, you know, an enclosed interior space that like really felt like how you imagine some of these like testimonies from like Corey Good of like underground cities where like you're in just like a ginormous cavern. Like that's what it
Yeah,
felt like. It feels like a cavern that's the biggest cavern you've ever been in. And I've been in Mammoth Cave, so I've been in some big, pretty big caverns. But I mean, the Luxor Hotel dwarfs Mammoth Cave.
I remember when I was there, um, being in the main lobby and looking up, you saw everything kind of converge. But
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was basically everything you could possibly want. It had hotels, it had restaurants, it had shops, it had rides, literally anything. And it almost felt like Doctor Who, the TARDIS.
Mm-hmm.
You thought it was bigger on the inside for some reason. Like when you thought you got to
Yeah.
the end of the building, you found there was another location on after that.
Yeah, I mean, it goes on forever. And all three of the hotels in a row are connected from Mandalay Bay, Luxor, and then Camelot, whatever, Excalibur Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think Luxor is like really important in the larger scheme of this like master conspiracy, just because, like you said, there is that pyramid on the dollar bill, and I think that that hotel was built in America for a specific reason that it has like this really significant like occult meaning to the people in charge and the people who built it.
It's a,
America's kind of they want to make America into like I wrote this is my new map that's not even out yet, so this is like a mega super preview right now, but they want to make America like the idea of America was a Masonic Atlantis, and obviously the Masons are obsessed with Egyptian culture and you know are trying to like recreate it in some way with themselves as the pharaohs.
mm-hmm. I mean, you had the Washington Monument, which is an obelisk. Um,
Mm-hmm.
several several presidents, many congressmen were or currently are Masons. Um, I know that Q actually just recently outed the Masons recently.
Yes, I'm so glad for that. Should we talk about Q outing the Masons? Because
Let's
seriously,
let's
that
talk
was
about that. Um, I believe
all
it
right.
was the first one was in.
There you go. Look, read it up. Read up.
There you go. I think the first
First,
event was in Sandy Hook, not Sandy Hook. Was it Parkland? I forgot which one it was. But it was you had one where you had the gentleman with the Mason hat, and then
mhm.
at Santa Fe it was the gentleman with the Mason necklace.
Yeah, I think people were saying it was a Mason hat maybe in Parkland, but then it actually turned out that he was actually in San Bernardino. But you know, same difference. Like it's still a shooting with the Mason on the scene, and there was something going on in Parkland with a Mason on the scene. So
Mm-hmm.
just as another Q post about the Masons, like just saying that not all Masons are bad, basically, which you know I'm confused because I still don't know if Trump's a Mason or if Q's a Mason. Like, I mean, if they're so powerful, I feel like they must be involved in some way. But I think, like with our military, how there's white hats and black hats, within the Masons, there's probably white hats and black hats.
Mm-hmm. I would assume there probably is equal number of black hats and white hats, and we also have like whistleblowers and things of that nature, who maybe are like got to a level where they just kind of felt self-conscious about it, and then they were like, no, we got to let people know about this. It's getting too crazy.
Hmm. But then I think I'm not sure, like completely. Like, whenever I talk about Masons, the Masons are going to jump on me and say, "You don't know anything. You're not in a lodge." But you know I watched the movie The Craft, and Freemasonry is associated with witchcraft. And when you're in a coven, if you leave the coven, your other witches kill you. And I don't know if that's like the policy in Freemasonry, but definitely if you leave Freemasonry and start like blabbing their secrets to everyone, your life's in danger. And so, you know, these people who are already in the organization and are committed, you know, they're not really in a position to have a uh, reasonable argument about, you know, a open-minded and critical argument about the organization to anyone because if they are committed in that organization, like their life's on the line if they speak ill about it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I have one document that was saying that Freemasonry, witchcraft, and one other thing are like kind of all under the same umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, they're into black magic. Like that's why they worship King Solomon, is because supposedly King Solomon, I mean, whoever he was an Egyptian pharaoh, but in the mythology of King Solomon, he got into a lot of black magic in like his later years, and like his corruption and his abandonment of the Hebrew God at that time was why Israel, united Israel as a monarchy, split into two different kingdoms. And that's obviously all just Bible stuff, but there might be analogies to real world events in Egypt as well. But you know, there's so much sort of black magic folklore that came out of King Solomon that I feel like it must have come from somewhere. Like it must have come from some type of actual events. And like even like the Kabbalah, I think, is credited to King Solomon channeling this like fallen angel, Raziel. I've been doing a little bit more research into that. There's a little bit more about that on my new Sephiroth map. Sorry, I know we're supposed to be talking about the Qmap, but I just keep jumping around.
Hey, no problem. I have no problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, nobody really knows exactly where the Kabbalah came from, but I think like the theory is that it was channeled by King Solomon from this like fallen angel that's like part of Lucifer's pantheon.
Mm-hmm. I've heard like different things about like going into like and for people who are of the Abrahamic faiths, I'm just going to go into several things that it's kind of interesting. Like the idea of the Kabbalah, when you go into it, how you have the crucifix of Christianity, you have the Merkaba of Judaism, and then you have the Kaaba of Islam, all kind of within that one shape.
Oh yeah, it's true. Yeah.
I think it's like this. It's like a square, and then it protrudes on the sides. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah,
there's
so you have
definitely
the
all those
cross
shapes in
there,
there.
and the Merkaba can be on top, and then if you tilt it, then you have the Kaaba.
Yeah, the Kaaba is a very interesting shape. The fact that the Muslims worship that big black cube is like, I've heard a few different theories about what might be in there. Very secretive. I know. I was just looking. Actually, this is the article. It's like the Bibliothecopolis article about the black nobility. That is where I read that Freemasonry and Wicca are basically sort of under one umbrella.
Really?
Yeah, but they get into black magic. I mean, it's the bottom line. Not in the Blue Lodge, in the Scottish Rite 32nd degree. Like, don't get on my case, Masons.
Oh wow, okay. But when you get into like degrees and stuff like that, it kind of blows my mind for some reason. It's like
Yeah. Well, it's like we have this other chart, like the Masonic family tree, that shows pretty well. I also had that picture of like the circular chart from the George Washington Masonic Memorial that showed just all the different branches and names within Freemasonry. But there was another specific chart that Michael had found from his blog, and actually I saw it somewhere else. Here it is. I'm really organized with my files, so I can pull this stuff up really fast. But yeah, this is like the Masonic family tree map, and where's the Blue Lodge? Oh, the Blue Lodge is like way down here. So it's like when Masons from the Blue Lodge are telling me like there's no witchcraft, there's no Satanism, it's like come all the way up here and it's a different story, you know?
mm-hmm.
You got the Yorkish Rite and the Scottish Rite. And I don't even know all this stuff. I mean, it's so complicated. Like, I'm not an expert or anything, but from everything that, you know, I've learned from the conspiracy realm, that Scottish Rite is like the dark one. I'm not really sure like what's the deal with the Yorkish Rite, but the Scottish Rite is where the Illuminati infiltrated, and it's like the most evil one, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Druids? We got a question. Druids?
Oh, there's it. Yeah. So on your actual full map, there was talking about the Druids on it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I forgot what was connected to it. But What was the relevance of it?
Oh no, definitely. The Druids, let me just pull up really quickly the square map so I can show you, because if I show you on here, it's going to be reversed, right? So I kept the Druids on the new square map because it is very important to... Wait, did I keep it on there?
It's on the main one on the top left.
Oh, it's on the top right on the new one, the Druids and the Burning Man ritual. Now, on the original Qmap, that's supposed to be connected to the Egyptian pharaohs because basically the legends of the earliest pharaoh connect to Scotland. They say that the earliest pharaoh Menes was buried in Scotland, and then the legends from Celtic culture say that some of their earliest princesses came from Egypt. Like this woman, Princess Scata, was supposedly Menes's daughter. So basically, that's like the extent that I know about it. But basically, both of their cultures say that they came from each other. So you have to think that, you know, there might have actually been a connection between these two different peoples, and obviously like this different type of culture, but at least some of like the key players actually overlapped. So there's this connection between Egyptian ancient pharaohs and ancient Celts, and a lot of the Druid culture is reflected in what we think is pretty much like the Illuminati culture now, like just like the idea of human sacrifices and rituals and like cloaks and hooded stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not like an expert on Druid culture, but I know that a lot of these elements of Druid culture tie into what the elite occult beliefs are now. And I mean, just the fact that we have this Burning Man festival in Nevada, and what I've learned recently is there's burns all over the country. Like there's burns in Ohio that's not as famous as Burning Man, but there's like burns. It's like part of our culture now, and actually that whole tradition comes back to the Druids and the Burning Man. It's actually in Druid, I think it's called the Wicker Man, where they would actually put... Yeah, they'd actually put humans in Wicker Man and burn it.
It's just like this humongous effigy, right? It's like this humongous thing, and they set it alight.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the same thing what they do at the Burning Man Festival today, just they would actually put humans in it, like with the intention, and burn it as a sacrifice.
Oh,
so,
wow.
I mean, people think Burning Man is just like this fun little desert, like let's get together and be bohemian, but it actually has very dark origins. I'm not even sure like exactly which god like the Druids worshipped. I mean, I would love to read a book on the Druids, but they definitely were into human sacrifice. I think they found like all kinds of like bones around Stonehenge and stuff as well.
In the comments, you goes prisoners. They put prisoners in there.
Prisoners. Well, yeah.
So
maybe I don't know if they had like if they've been condemned to death at court either, but like even that's a form of human sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think in like a utopian culture, like courts will probably not do sentence people to death. It's like kind of intense, and it's hard to know when to draw the line when you start getting into capital punishment.
So when you go into like all these different like human sacrifices and things like that, I remember I was watching a video about like the Book of Enoch and other things of like that nature, and how the reason why they do these like human sacrifices and they do all these horrific things is because they're trying to do the exact opposite of what would be considered part of the covenant.
So, the covenant of what?
Like the new covenant, like Moses and Jesus. How they're like, you have these rules you have to do. Like you're not supposed to steal. You're supposed to honor your parents, not adultery and stuff like that. The Ten Commandments and things of that nature. And I know there's several cults who are like, in order to like basically give the middle finger to God, we're going to do the exact opposite. We're going to steal. We're going to do sacrifices. We're going to defile children.
Well, that's definitely what I've heard is involved in the initiations into higher levels of Freemasonry. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you're
And
talking modern, right? Or are you talking, because
no, this is
Druid,
modern.
yeah.
There are several the elites that have discussed things of that nature. Like in the Podesta emails, they talk about how one, I think it was John Podesta, had this talk about how he was sacrificing somebody, I think it was like a chicken or something, to Moloch.
Yeah.
Um,
I know, like those emails are so crazy. Definitely, I've read the exact same one where he's like, "Oh, I'll just." It's like a casual. It's like a footnote. It's like, "I'll sacrifice a chicken to Moloch, and we'll see how it goes." It's like if they even know about that stuff, it's like they're into it.
and, then, and then you jump into spear cooking, and that's a whole different conversation.
Oh yeah. Can I give you a little preview of some of the artwork I've done for the Square Qmap?
Sure.
So this is the Square Qmap, the original, obviously the black and white, and then what I've done is done some different overlays that I'm going to share on Instagram. So like this is like the Masonic one with the eye. This is like the Pleiadian one with the symbol of the Federation Peace Off or Federation of Light or something. I forget
The Galactic
exactly.
Federation of Light.
Yeah, I mean that's not like the official symbol, but it's related.
Yeah.
We've got like the symbol of the Octagon Empire. We've got Janus, who's the Roman god with two faces. It's actually the god of gods in Roman pantheon, which I just realized recently. I just shared this one on Instagram. It's Plus Ultra. I'm still trying to figure out if this is like a legit secret society or what. And then this one looks like the Matrix. And then this is a Scottish Rite, double-headed phoenix symbol. So yeah, I just went crazy like one night last weekend and did all of those. And I was like, why did I do that? And now I have like too many Instagrams to post, but at least you've seen it now.
Oh, on the topic of the Matrix,
Mm-hmm.
I remember Comedy Central did a whole thing about Q, and the map came into play.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's actually I think either like the second or third time the map kind of went viral. Because after that Comedy Central, I got a whole slew of new like orders and well actually I don't know if the website was up yet, but I got a whole slew of like just contacts on social media and I feel like a lot more people discovered it then. Um, so yeah, it was I know they were trying to bash it, but it was great exposure.
Like I remember Rod. I actually remember Q has actually posted it within the drops of watch this. Sit down.
Yeah, that was like the one thing that's like the main connection between QAnon and my actual map, because that let me know that Q had actually seen my map, which was really cool. I was
Hey,
very proud of that.
maybe Q has. Maybe the Anons have.
Oh,
I wouldn't put it
I'm
over
sure they
them.
have online, but it was like at least it was like the most direct reference to it as well.
Like I know that when you actually watch the Comedy Central skit about it, they actually doctored several things. Like I remember one was about Operation High Jump, but then they changed it to High Trump, and they changed
Yeah,
the
they
dates.
totally.
I think the original date was 1947 was High Jump, and then they changed it like to like 53, like some irrelevant. No, 27. They changed it like to 1927, which is a completely irrelevant date.
Yeah, like actually, Jordan Sather did a video like really comparing the two screenshots.
Yeah.
And they did screw it up, but I think they didn't put that much thought into it. I think they just gave it to like a graphic designer and was like, change this enough so that it makes no sense. But I mean, I don't know. Like, it's creepy for me to think that they might have had like some kind of like CIA operative like actually changing these things around. Like, but I'm glad they had to change it because that tells me that I was onto something. Not that I need to know that from them, but.
I think with the amount of censorship and the amount of hit pieces at this point, you can kind of make a rough assessment that there's something there.
Yeah, I have a whole folder of that little thing. Well, we're not going to play it, but yeah, it's like they went through, what did I say? Learn to distort the map, the master conspiracy. That's the one thing I really liked about their skit was that they labeled it the master conspiracy. That's Jordan Sather's post about it where he was comparing the two. Yeah, they fucked. I didn't even have the Steele dossier on the original Qmap. Like, they just added whatever they wanted.
I don't think that circle. It looks like it might be for the trauma-based mind control.
Yeah, it's like they've changed it so much. I can barely even tell where that's supposed to. Yeah, I think that is probably the MK Ultra circle.
Because it's actually it is a circle, or
Yeah.
an oblong circle. So
Yeah.
it's like the only thing that would. And then you have like, yeah, it's only probably the closest thing you're gonna get to it.
Yeah, and then the other thing they did was they put Ra. They said like Ra was the most important thing on the map, and put Ra in the center of what was the power structure pyramid with Pindar and the Council of 13. It's just like the power structure of the world, and they just put Ra in there. Which, I mean, I think Ra is important, but not so much to the occultists. I think. Well, I don't know. It's kind of complicated, but.
I mean, if you're gonna do an Egyptian god when it comes to occults, you're probably gonna jump to like Set or maybe Anubis.
Yeah, so I keep my Egyptian god chart obviously like right in front of my computer, so I can go back and reference really easily. But yeah, Set is sort of the Egyptian god that I think is one of the most important to the occultists, as well as Osiris, because
Osiris.
Set is actually tied to the Canaanite god Baal, who kind of is like the archetype for Satan. And actually, Amun Ra, and Horus are sort of the original archetype for Jesus Christ, because these three, see, it says here it's the same deity, and it was like the son of these two, so it was kind of like the son of God, which is sort of the same thing as.
That's Horus, right?
Yeah, Amun. I wrote it wrong, but Ra and Horus, they kind of tie back to the Jesus prototype. Yeah, it's confusing. Like, I'm still trying to figure it out. But yeah, I keep that there. I keep the cross here, and I keep who over here. That's the that's the setup if you want to know where the Qmap was created.
I'm one thing I'm actually really excited when if I look into like the mini map, the mini QWeb, is you mentioned like Solar Warden, and then there's also like Cabamore and other things. I'm actually kind of really invested in. So it's really kind of exciting to see this kind of gradually evolve and change and develop.
Yeah, I definitely kept like Solar Warden on there, and I even kept the ET bubble and Cabamore, because I think that's really some of the most important things on there. I added one new thing actually in the ET bubble that I think might be important, which is Bashar, which is actually on the Great Awakening map as well. But I actually just learned about Bashar last weekend from someone at the Serpent Mountain Festival, who was telling me that Bashar is like an ET who has a ship like hovering above Bell Rock in Sedona, and I guess whoever's channeling Bashar is like a really, really good channeler, like one of the best channelers out there today. So that's definitely something to look into if you're into. I think he's Pleiadian, but it's not the same thing as Lord Ashtar. So
let's see, the ones I do watch when it comes to channelers, I look at any channelers that has to deal with Ashtar, or I follow Cabamore. Have you ever heard of Lord Cryan?
I'm not sure if I might have heard of him, but I definitely don't know too much about him.
Well, from what I was told by several of my friends, he's one of the more older ones, where this gentleman's been channeling for 30, 40 plus years.
Yeah.
So, and he actually had members of the UN have actually had him come in to do a channeling within the session of the UN.
Whoa. What? Oh my God, I need to look him up. I love channeling. I mean, when you can trust it. I mean, not that you should ever like completely trust it without skepticism, but I think it's a valid form of obtaining, communication with ETs.
Hmm. And with the
And I want to show you
with the
actually. Go ahead.
uh, I was just gonna go
Go
that
ahead.
with the advent of the Space Force, it's gonna make a lot of these things that we talk about, will start filtering out, and we'll be able to discuss these things a little bit more freely without having too much skepticism. We'll be able to root out the stuff that isn't true, be able to put the things that actually are true in their own place, just like we did with flight and when it came to the Air Force and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. We'll find out which of these channelers are legit and not. I mean, I don't follow too many different ones, but I was gonna say, like, one of the ones that I discovered like last summer, I read this book, The Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marciniak.
Mm-hmm.
It's the teachings of the Pleiadians.
Mm-hmm.
I really like her. I mean, I'm not sure what everybody else thinks, but it's a really good book, and it's a really good introduction to the Pleiadian like teachings, I guess you would say. Um, they're just, it's just the bomb. Like they're just like really peaceful. They're legit. Like anyone who says that like aliens are demons and these guys have the bad intentions, it's like, well, it's just it's like a beautiful, peaceful philosophy. So how could you complain?
And the fact that we kind of put them all into one, we know what they're going to look like, and how if you kind of dig into it, there's multiple different races, different shapes, different sizes, different abilities. Some are benevolent, some are malevolent.
Hmm. Yeah, we still got Pleiadian guidance on the Qmap, which I think that's been one of people's favorite points on there that they point out, and they're like, oh, like that's cool. Operation Mjolnir is basically like the space side of what's going on Earth. It's like we have Q and the military doing taking the planet back from the Illuminati, but then Operation Mjolnir is the Pleiadians and the Galactic Federation of Light Alliance taking out the negative ETs in space and underground. So it's a multi-dimensional battle going on, really, is the theory.
It would make a fantastic spy novel
Oh
until
yeah, I
you
mean
realize
it
that,
would make a Star Wars movie. It would make a Star Wars
yeah,
movie.
it,
And
until
actually, if you're
oh,
interested in Operation Mjolnir, I posted, it was like a really short, I think it was a channeling video with pretty cool graphics that basically said a little bit more about it. And actually, I learned a few things that's kind of like even more up to date about it, like what's going on and like the Space War side of things that's ongoing.
mhm.
And Mjolnir, I learned, is actually a reference to, I think that's like the name of Thor's hammer.
Yeah, it's the
So
name
it's
of
basically,
it's a hammer that was actually created by the dwarves, and the hammer is actually made of a metal called uru, and it's formed from the bark of the tree of life.
oh wow.
So
Well,
he,
I did see the new Avengers movie, so I know what that's like.
so what's funny is that when it comes to what we know of like Thor in Nordic mythology is totally different than what they talk about within like Marvel comics and their
Hmm.
incarnation of him. They take a bunch of liberties, like the ability, like they talk about how only he can pick it up. Well, he can, but then there's other people who are able to as long as Odin wills it. And
Oh.
and he Thor even has trouble holding it, and that he actually has his own braces in order to pick it up because even he has difficulty picking it up.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I have a book about Nordic mythology that I would like to read, but I haven't gotten the time to read it. Mary's saying we should watch Star Trek. Yeah, there's a lot of truth in Star Trek too, actually. In the other chat I was on, well, not a chat, it was the interview with 5D Consciousness. This Redonkulus was mentioning that in Star Trek there's something called the Prime Directive,
Oh
which
yeah,
states
yeah.
that they can't sort of interact with alien species that are like less advanced and not advanced enough to contact them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the exact same thing as why we don't see ETs, coming down and chatting with us on Earth. Is they have this same thing, like a Prime Directive that, um, they're not supposed to interact with us in that way. And if they do, it's going to be like the
Bad
Archons and
karma.
the reptilians that are breaking the law and doing bad shit.
There was, I remember I think it was Star Trek Voyager, there was something called the Omega Protocol. And with that, it actually overrode the Prime Directive.
And what was that?
It's been a while since I actually watched that episode, but I think it was like if you harness this type of material, there's a special type of material that basically actually eviscerate every. There we go. Is that,
I think the Archons are messing with us. Should we call it for tonight?
you know what? Give me one moment. Let me see if I can
hear you
and
now.
refresh this. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Right? I'm gonna see it. I'm gonna see if I can drop the split screen, and I'm gonna re-invite you in. That normally refreshes it.
Yeah, the Archons don't want people to know about Omega.
So, give me one moment. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second. Adjust that. Right. I'm not gonna call it off. We're gonna play this out. You only get the flack when you're over the target. There we go. Much better.
There. Well, wait. Have we been on for 56 minutes already?
Yeah.
Frozen. Well, let's call it. Let's the outro. I think an hour is good for the first discussion.
Several people are saying no, don't call it. Okay, well, you know what? We'll call it right now, and then we'll probably we can do this. We can, if you want to join some other time, we can, go into other topics.
Yeah, whenever. I mean, now that I know how to do it, that's kind of like the breakthrough. So I know how to do screen share. I know how to do Facebook chat with you. So whenever.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right. Well, thank you very much for hopping on. Wait a minute. Did it just clear up? No, okay.
Yeah, it cleared up because we're ending it. they're like, move along.
Actually, Facebook, we're joking. Never mind. No. Anyway, okay. Well, let's wrap it up a little bit. I think we hit a good point where we got off the main topic, and now we're going into like side conversation. So, all right. So thank you for joining me. I know I've been really wanting to do this for some time, so I'm actually glad you had the time to do so.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for watching. Thank you for hosting. I'll just plug my website. If you want the free download of the mini Qmap or any Qmap, it's deepstatemappingproject.com. You can also get like the t-shirts and the posters. Actually, let me just show you really quick. My poster is the fancy one. It's like the antique version in like a fancy frame. That's the one I have downstairs. Then I have the color one upstairs. But yeah, like go for it, guys.
And yeah, so this is on. All right. Well, thank you very much. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I've been really wanting to have Dylan on, and I've been a fan of his for quite some time. And to actually talk to the author of the map and seeing how this evolved over a period of time, it's just stunning. Just to see history just basically unfold in front of your face. I really have not much more to talk about, so thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a wonderful night. And until then, I'll catch you guys later. Bye now.